Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again this week, going back to October 30th, 2000, as we talk about Rhapsody's Dawn of Victory album, their third studio release in almost as many years. But before we talk all things Rhapsody, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. I mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again. The timing for this was really pretty spot on with the announcement that they would be playing, or Fabio Leone would be playing this whole album in its entirety at Prague Power. But it also happens to be this year is the 25th anniversary. Granted, we're doing it a few months early, but at least the year is right.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I have some strong thoughts on this one, which is interesting because the album came out 25 years ago, and here we are talking about it all these years later. But this will be fun, certainly timely. But before we get there, have you listened to anything new and exciting this week? I feel like every time I turn around, there's a new single by somebody that I have to check out.
Yeah, this was my time. Like last time we spoke was my time to catch up on singles, and now this has been my time to catch up on albums. So I'll throw my hat in the ring for early album of the year contender Halo Effect and March of the Unheard. I listened to it earlier today, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So yeah, this is something that years ago I would not have probably paid any attention to, but I thought the first album was so good and the live performance was so good that I definitely wanted to give this a good listen, and I did, and it was great. So yeah, add me to the pile of fans for this one.
Yeah, it's getting like a lot of great praise, save for one or two people who let us know on Patreon that they like the first one better. But by and large, a lot of people are really into this album. And I'll stay in Sweden myself. We have a group metal chat with a bunch of guys, and the amount of stuff that some of these guys ingest is just incredible to me. I thought I listened to a lot of stuff, but these guys put me to shame. I say that to say they turned me on to a band out of Sweden called Medusian, Medusin. They're we'll call them a symphonic death metal band out of Gothenburg, and this EP that just came out by the name of Library has 7 tracks, and it is really top-notch symphonic death metal. Kind of, some cleans, a lot of growls, but definitely accessible, kind of in an Epica vein, just without the female soprano vocals. Really cool stuff, really cool EP, and something a band that I'm going to keep an eye on going forward, just because I had never heard of these guys, but some of the guys in the chat were raving about it, and I can totally see why. This was good stuff. Nice.
I also listened to the Big Deal's second album, Electrified, and their debut album, I think, had appeared on my list, on my best of whatever year it was list. Let's see, it came out, the first album came out in 2022. So I was a pretty big fan of the first album. And so, as I pull it up, it was in my top 50, probably more towards 50 than towards 1, but, it's just really solid, frontier style, like melodic hard rock / metal with two female vocalists. Like, I don't know if it'll end up on my list or not by the end of the year. There's still so much to come, but I mean, it was just a very enjoyable, easy listen. It just has a little bit of that kind of 80s keyboard driven sound that, I always am a sucker for. So, I liked it.
At your recommendation, I put it on earlier today, and I found it to be just a really easy listen. Nothing that blew me away. Not going to be my album of the year or anything like that, but it's something that you could just kind of have on the background, and every so often be like, oh yeah, this is pretty good, and then you go back to what you're doing. It was really just an easy listen, as Frontiers, releases often are, but this is very much in that vein, and they do a nice job. So good catch on that one.
Yep, and I'll name one other album that I listened to, Avatarium's Between You, God, the Devil, and the Dead, which I've been kind of hyping up towards the end of last year and into this year, as I've always been a fan of this band, because it's one of the rare female fronted doom style bands, which you don't see a ton of, and I think it's just done so well. Jenny Ann Smith, the lead singer, has such a soulful and unique voice, and they're also joined by Marcus Jadell, who I remember from his time in Royal Hunt, but he was also in Evergrey at a time. And Andreas Johansson is their drummer, and he also was a member of, as a matter of fact, he's currently Royal Hunt's drummer as well. So some cool names here. Actually, their bass player is the live bass player for Night Flight Orchestra. So everybody has a
side hustle,
credit.
if you will.
Yeah, nice. Side hustle or a main hustle. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But I always thought this was a cool band. It's I'm not the biggest Doom fan in the world, and I remember really wanting to like their previous album, Death Wears Your Sting, more than I did. So I'm hoping maybe this one does better for me throughout the year. But I just really enjoy the style that they do. It's really kind of cool, and I consider it like a little bit off the beaten path of what I typically listen to, but yet enjoy.
I feel like they have an Oceans of Slumber vibe to them, or something to that effect. Every time I listen to them, that I'm thought of the U.S. based band. I listened to this album quite a bit already, because we got a copy of it in advance, and I listened to the hell out of it towards the end of last year. I don't know if it's going to have the staying power, but there's a handful of songs on there that are really, really good, and I think stood out amongst the rest. But it's something I'll go back to, just because I like the band, and it's something I'd also like to see live. I'd really think they would put on a great live show. I'm hoping that at some point either Prog Power gets them, or 70K, or even a tour. I could see them hopping on a short run of shows with a band like Candlemass and going over very, very well.
Yeah, they're one of the bands that I've consistently kept on my list, or my sponsor list, for Prog Power, in hopes that maybe they would get the call, if you will. But I still wait. I guess there's not too much time left for them to pull it off. But yeah, I would love to see them in any shape or form.
Nice. Well, with that all said, unless you have anything else you want to talk about up front, I say we get into some Rhapsody.
No, basically the glut of singles that I rattled off last week. I just invite everybody to go check out our playlists on Spotify. You can find both of our favorite songs of 2024. We basically did a playlist of our favorite songs from our favorite albums, so to speak. So 50 songs. I want to say we only overlapped, I think, one song on the two playlists, and it was Timeless Fairy Tale. But also there's some new playlists for 2025 that I already have two for the year so far. And there's a lot of new singles that are worth checking out that we mentioned at the start of the last episode. And that's it for me for now.
And, I'll mention at the end, obviously next month, or I should say next week, we'll have our, request for the month of February. And if you want to make a request, join the Patreon. That's where we take all of our requests from. We've got a handful in the queue, but are always happy to cover what it is that people want to hear. So consider joining the Patreon. Obviously, give us a like and a follow if you like what you hear. And I think with that, let's talk about Dawn of Victory. This was the third release from Rhapsody. They obviously put out their debut album, Legendary Tales, in 1997, the follow-up effort in 1998. And I think that between Legendary Tales and Symphony of Enchanted Lands, the band would kind of evolve from there. Dawn of Victory, I think, was a blend of both of these first two albums. And then as the band would kind of go on from there with Reign of a Thousand Flames and Power of the Dragon Flame in the years that followed, the band would kind of take a step back in many ways, at least for me. Not that the music wasn't enjoyable, but I didn't think top to bottom the albums were as good as the first two, especially. And I always lumped this album in with those latter albums, which I discussed, and I think I was wrong to do that. So let me put that up front. This album never really clicked with me the way I think it should have, given the breadth and depth of the material here. But I found it to actually be a really easy and enjoyable listen going back to it. So it's one of those rare instances where I think I like something a lot better now than I used to when, given I was, a fan of the band for so many years.
I was hoping that would be the case, because when you were told me that this wasn't one of your favorite Rhapsody albums, I was a little bit confused, I guess. I just felt like I don't know. For me, as much as I enjoyed the first two albums, I feel like this was really them showing how much they had matured as a band, and it feels like all of the work that went into those first two albums, I think really just comes together here. And I feel like it's arguably, in my opinion, their most complete album. And I hate to say that the band, peaked in 2000, 25 years ago, but for me, that's kind of where it really, I think they hit their apex for me. And also I think just where I was at in my metal listening stage, 2000 was such a huge year for me. I had started college, started doing a radio show and playing a lot of this stuff. Having access to Napster and having a wider variety of music to choose from instead of just what I could afford to buy. But I remember ordering the box set or the digibook, the deluxe digibook of this album, along with the dark box for Halloween's Dark Ride album that came with a number of things that no one would ever need, but I
but we're nice to have.
Yeah, I mean, when you need a Halloween Zippo and a Halloween mouse pad, that box set is the way to go. The Dawn of Victory box set was a little simpler. It was really just a really big booklet. It came with an extra disc with some not really so much bonus tracks as it was edits or alternates of tracks from the album, plus the Halloween cover of Guardians, which was on the Keepers of Jericho album, which I think I had also got right around the same time. And so all those albums are just so embedded in my brain as being so important to that time. And it wouldn't be too long after this where I kind of started to fall out of love with metal for a little while. And so, I, especially when Rhapsody would become Rhapsody of Fire, I kind of was losing interest, I guess. And then once Luca left the band, it was kind of is it really Rhapsody if it's not, Luca and Alex making music together? But I'm sure we'll hit up some of these other albums too in the future. I know that there's people that have strong feelings about the whole discography, and I guess technically this is the Rhapsody that I guess would become Rhapsody of Fire and continue to be Rhapsody of Fire to this day. But it really does feel like there was they almost split into two completely different bands when Luca left, and now especially that Fabio is no longer part of Rhapsody of Fire. It's it really feels like a totally different band, and I think that's why I was able to slot them in my top 50 for 2024, because I finally feels like it's something else, and I'm not expecting it to be the old Rhapsody. It was just something I was able to put on and enjoy for what it was. It's not always possible, I guess. I'm looking at you, Eldritch, but in this case, yeah, just to kind of make a long story short, yeah, again, this is kind of where I think the band really peaked for me. I was so in love with this band with their first two albums. Like, I thought that they were going to be just an absolute power metal powerhouse for years to come. And I feel like maybe they would have if everybody stayed on the same page. But I feel like even now, like, Luca Turilli doesn't even seem like he's like interested in making metal music right now. So, Alex Starpoli is, holding the flame for Rhapsody of Fire, and Fabio's out there with a bunch of ex-members of the band just playing the old songs. So, the magic lives on, but I feel like it's one of those bands where you wonder what could have been.
So I guess I have a couple of questions. First, is this your favorite Rhapsody lineup? And I'll just kind of go through it. Obviously, as you mentioned, Luca Turilli on guitars, Fabio Leone on vocals, Eric Staropoli on keyboards, Alessandro Latta on bass, and Alex Holsworth on drums. Is this your favorite incarnation of the band, or would you go with somebody, a different version of them?
I'll just point out, at least according to Metal Archives, that Alex Holsworth did not actually contribute to the recordings on this album, even though he
joined it right after.
Yeah, but he was like listed as the drummer in the liner notes and stuff, which as we know, bands do sometimes. It's supposedly the drummer was Thunder Force, which was which is weird because it's his identity has never been revealed. So it has been speculated that the drums on this album in particular, along with the Reign of a Thousand Flames EP and the Power of the Dragon Flame album, were either programmed and Thunder Force is not actually a real person and is Ben Timely's Italian cousin, or that there's another rumor that Thunder Force is Robert Hunike Rizzo, who we I think talked about back when we were talking about Luca Turilli's first solo album. He was the drummer on that, I believe. So who knows? It's Rhapsody always was weird about their drummers. I feel like even in the old days, they didn't have like an actual drummer on the Legendary Tales liner notes. But I mean, just to answer your question, I don't really have a big preference. Like, as long as it's like Fabio, Luca, and Alex together, I've never had a really strong feeling one way or the other about who was playing the bass or who was drumming. And I know that they've had like, live rhythm guitarists and stuff like that. But, I don't know. I think I've seen the French guys, with Fabio and Luca with Luca more than anything else. I've seen so many iterations of this band with like each one was a completely different lineup. There was one that had Tom Hess in it. There was one with Alessandro Conti singing with Luca, and then next year will be another different with Alex Holsworth back on drums again, in place of Alex Landenberg, who I think was the drummer when we saw them at Prague Power last. Don't ask me how I remember any of this stuff, but yes, to answer your question in another long-winded fashion, no, I don't really have a major preference, but I do the sound that this album has is probably my preferred sound of Rhapsody, I guess. But I mean, I would say that this is arguably my favorite Rhapsody album of any of the Rhapsodies, including the Luca Turilli's and Luca Turilli Rhapsodies or Rhapsody of Fire, or whatever, however you want to say it. Yeah, I think that that's pretty safe to say.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you one other corollary to this before we jump into the album proper. Would you agree? So they're going to play this entire album next year at Prague Power on day one. If you had to select one album to hear in its entirety, would this be the one you chose, or would you go with something else? And if so, why?
Yeah, I'm not just saying that because it's what was announced. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Dawn of Victory. So that's why I was so excited when I was excited to begin with that that like Fabio is going to come back and play Rhapsody songs, but for them to play this entire album, there's a number of songs that I've never heard live that I'm super excited to hear. So yeah, that's what I would have chosen without a doubt.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm also glad that you chose it because it gave me a chance to go back to it and kind of recalibrated me in many ways for what this show could be, just because I didn't have gigantic expectations, and now I think I'm singing a little bit of a different tune. The album itself, as I mentioned, released October 30th of 2000. Interestingly enough, recorded between June and August of that same year. So they recorded this thing and got this thing to print very, very quickly. Shout out to Limb Music, who at the time was just putting out such good stuff. This was just another of quality release on that label. I miss those days. It was one of those things, like if it came out on Limb or if it came out on certain labels, I would buy it immediately just because I knew it was going to be good. And this was, obviously no exception to that. It starts off with a 2-minute intro track called Lux Triumphans. And I mention that because this is what a lot of bands were doing at this time, that kind of standard symphonic intro. The difference, of course, is that this track just featured some of the most absurd narration that you'd ever hear in your entire life. To say it's overly dramatic would be an insult to people that are overly dramatic. I mean, it is the most over-the-top thing you've ever heard. But once you put that aside, the song itself is really good. I love the brass and the bells in the background, and it really sets up the rest of the album, especially the title track that comes next. Any thoughts on Lux Triumphans?
You could probably go back and listen to our, first two Rhapsody album reviews and the Luca Turilli solo album, and it's like they all have something very similar to open things up, which is just a kind of a classical music styled intro. It was kind of like they took a page out of Halloween's book, with the Keeper albums, and Master of the Rings, I think, also had an intro like that, and they like went like total medieval, like not that they went medieval on their asses, but like they went in like that medieval kind of direction, that Renaissance fair direction that fits perfectly for a band like this, and all it does, I think, is make the first full length song on each album feel all the more epic because it has this build that leads up to it. And then they did that on the previous two albums leading up to Warrior of Ice and Emerald Sword, which are two of like the most, celebrated Rhapsody songs of all time, and probably two of my favorite power metal songs ever. And it's a repeat performance here. It leads into Dawn of Victory, which I think is potentially even better than those other two somehow.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was shocked at how much I loved listening to Dawn of Victory when it came on. I don't know that I ever realized how great this song was and how it just kind of, for the first proper track on the album, it is maybe their best song in their catalog. I mean, it's that good. I definitely like it better than I ever did. And it's just an iconic power metal riff. That opening riff to this song is just iconic. The song is blazing fast. It is one of those bangers that reminds me of a couple of the songs on the debut album. Like I said, this was kind of a blend of different stuff from those first two albums. This just takes me back to some of those songs on the first album. And Leone just sounds so comfortable singing this style and this song. And it has like an epic feel to it. Something I won't say very much until we get to the very end of the album, because I think the last track has that same epic feel to it. But the difference here is that this is a really short song. It's a short, tight song with an epic feel. And I feel like if you were going to play the definition of Rhapsody from those first three albums, this might be the song you would play for someone that's never heard the band.
I could not agree more. And I pulled up the set list from June of 2022 when it was the Turilli Leone version of Rhapsody, and they opened with this song, and I just remember losing my mind to open a set with a song like that, and then to go directly into Emerald Sword and Wisdom of the Kings. I was having the best time. I remember just I had a smile on my face. It was my 40th birthday that day. Like, it was just the best day ever. So I'm just pumped that chances are they're going to be opening again with this track when we see them later this year. Yeah, this is just a all time great power metal song, and I just, you hear that those wickedly fast keyboards playing against those wickedly fast guitar riffs, and it's just like it was. I think even still in 2000, like they're still Rhapsody still felt pretty fresh. It didn't feel like there was a million bands that were trying to do what Rhapsody was doing, and I think I like this song more now than I did back then, and I liked it a lot back then. So this is just a hell of a way to kick things off.
Well, I agree with you about it being a grower. And then we get to Triumph for My Magic Steel, the third track. Kind of a tough act to follow in many ways, but this is a slower, I'm going to use the word like quirkier tune. I think the guitars and the strings sound great together. But before I do a deep dive, what are your thoughts on Triumph for My Magic Steel?
So, like, Rhapsody kind of had like a not a tradition, but it kind of was like a pattern that you started to see by the time you got to this third album, where you had your classical style intro, your blazing fast power metal, first full length song, and then track 3 would be like a little bit more of a mid-paced song, but like just like absolute hooks galore, so catchy. Legendary Tales had Rage of the Winter. Symphony of Enchanted Lands had Wisdom of the Kings, which I think was my song of the week when we did that album. And I feel like this album is no different. It's I don't know if it's quite Wisdom of the Kings level, but it's a damn good song, and it just has all the elements of Rhapsody that I love. It's a little bit of a slower pace than Dawn of Victory, but so are most songs. I just think it's a really strong next track to just keep things moving, but without like kind of blowing out the speed aspect right away, with the first 2 full length tracks being like real face melters. But this is a damn good song, and it's catchy as hell.
I also prefer Wisdom of the Kings, but I hear what you're saying. I think the verses have like this storytelling quality to them. Something about it just kind of moves the story along. And I like how they lead into the chorus. I think the bridge is really catchy, a little generic sounding, but enjoyable. And I don't know, the song never really jumped out for me in the past, but this is one of those songs where I can totally see why people would love it. And I actually look forward to seeing it live. I think it's going to come off really well in a live setting. An interesting tune. And then it leads into another tune that's just absolutely fascinating for so many reasons. The Village of Dwarves. Not the kind of song I would want to have people know that I was listening to. I'm not going to lie. Everything from the title on down, like if I put this on in the office and people heard me listening to this, I think that they would just be giving me looks and might even get fired. Like there's a better chance of me listening to black metal and having it go over well.
Promoted.
This is such... It's hard for anyone to admit that someone could love this, but at the same time, it's always been a memorable song to me. It's kind of got this really a cold intro, like just like a very cold, I don't know, that's the word I would use, a cold intro, and it leads into this like Ailstormish accordion thing that's going on that permeates a lot of the song. It's like a slow march. These short, whimsical verses, but that chorus is the most ridiculous earworm perhaps on the entire album. And I don't want to like it. I want to hate the song, but it's just so damn catchy that I find it almost hypnotic in a way. It's a fascinating song, and if you've never heard it, like go listen to it. It's worth a listen.
I've been harping on the fact that there really should be a keyboard player on stage for this set. But I mean, if there's not a guy dancing around with a fife like on stage to this song, they missed a very good opportunity. This song, I think it wasn't until I saw the band perform it live at some point where I was like, this song is the best. This is just what being a power metal nerd is all about. Like, it's just, it really is just so unbelievably cheesy, but like, there's just a really admirable, like warmth, like quality to it. And I just love that it's like the end of the track, they like double down on it. And it's just like, no,
they lean into it heavy.
Yeah. Like screw you guys. Like, we're going for it. I've always really liked this song. And so,
I won't tell anyone.
This is what I'm excited for everybody to lift their inflatable swords up at and just kind of nerd out to. Just a super fun song. I probably didn't appreciate it as much when I was younger, and now I'm just kind of like, whenever I hear it, I'm like, this rules. Like, this is great. You know, there's so much like just trauma in the world, and like this song just makes me kind of forget about all of it, and just like, you know, it's why you listen to this stuff, you know.
I think that's very well said. Actually, I can't really disagree with any of that. And speaking of songs that I guess I never really appreciated, Dargar, the Shadowland of the Black. Now, this is the Shadow Lord of the Black Mountain. That's right, Dargar, Shadow Lord of the Black Mountain. I knew the song. I totally forgot the title. Like, like when I saw this on the playlist, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I didn't know what it was. It was just so bizarre to me. This is another riff-based banger of a tune. This one, though, is darker. This reminds me of Symphony of Enchanted Land style, which just has a little bit of that, I don't know, heaviness and darkness that kind of permeates it. It's heavy, it's direct, maybe slightly a little less symphonic than the stuff that's come before it, but the verses are good. The pre-chorus is really good, and then it has this bright, almost cheery chorus, which is a deviation from the rest of the song. I also think it's one of Fabio's better performances on the album, and more than anything, Luca's guitar work on this is fantastic, especially during the solos. This might be the most underrated track on the album, and I'm actually going to make it my song of the week because I just was blown away at how much a song like this was better than I remembered it. So I wanted people to hear it, even though it's not one of the big singles from the album. So let's listen to Dargar, turn the floor over to him, and then we'll come back and hear your thoughts on Dargar, the Shadow Lord of the Black Mountain. So as we come back here with Dargar, tell me your thoughts on this. I know that we've never talked about this song ever in any capacity. So let's talk about it now, shall we?
I've always really liked this song. I feel like it feels in an album that is definitely telling a story. This feels very story driven. It's again like those sweeping orchestrations are just so like what Rhapsody did so well, like mixed with, you know, heavy metal guitars and drums. And I really kind of echo all of your sentiments. And I highly recommend for those who might not have heard before, if it's, I don't know if it's readily available through Spotify or iTunes or whatever, but there was a single released for Holy Thunder Force that came out in September prior to the album's release, and there's an 8.5-minute extended version of this song. And honestly, I would argue that this was the version they should have put on the main album, because I think it really fleshes out the song and pulls more out of it, and I think it makes it feel more epic. And I feel like that's kind of what it deserves to sound like on the album proper. I'm guessing they were trying to keep the whole album is just under 50 minutes, so they must have, I don't know if they were trying to keep it under that. I don't know that an extra, 3.5 minutes would have made a huge difference, but I think that it's actually even better, that version. It takes longer for the like heavier parts to kick in, so I feel like there's more of a delay and almost like a delayed gratification sort of thing. And I just really like the extended version. I remember listening to the single repeatedly. I was so excited about this damn album coming out that I was just like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and listen to the single until the album comes out. So I was very familiar with Holy Thunder Force by the time the album came out, but I do really like this extended version of Dargor.
Nice. I got to check that out. I don't know that I've ever heard it.
Yeah, absolutely recommend. Not to be confused with Gorgar, who was the evil pinball machine goblin from the Walls of Jericho days.
Well, he'll eat you, so I would stay far away from him, or at least that's what I've heard. But interesting. Like I said, it's always interesting when we can talk about something that we've never talked about ever in all these decades. Yet here we are. I feel like the Bloody Rage of the Titans is more of a standard, if you will, or a song that kind of encapsulates the band and something we probably have talked about at some point. It is in many ways kind of a ballad, or at least starts off that way. I just pictured like the snowy mountaintop and hearing this song while standing on top of it. And I think that Fabio's like operatic vocals are the highlight of this. Then about a minute and 40 seconds or so into the song, it starts to pick up speed. And the chorus has this very dramatic feel to it, but still kind of, even though the song picks up at that point, it retains some of those ballad-like qualities from the beginning of the tune. I have to say, though, the one thing about this song that kind of takes me out of it a little are the way they use the lyrics, kind of repeating the name of the song, but it feels like 13 different ways they're saying the same exact thing, and that is like the lyrics to the song. But that being said, quite good for what it is, just hard for me to take seriously.
After Village of Dwarves, like, if you're still taking anything seriously at this point,
That's fair.
I commend you. This, I think, is the closest thing we're going to get to a ballad on this album, and it feels like it at times, but it also has a pretty, like, almost like, like sitting around the old table with the mug of mead, and just kind of like, it has like that kind of almost pirate-esque kind of mid-tempo, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like it's kind of like a sea shanty kind of vibe, I guess. But this is another one that I feel like it just is perfectly placed. It's something that's a little bit more like ballad-esque at times. It's got a little bit more of a dramatic flair to it. Again, it's still, you still get like your keys and your guitars going crazy like at some point. So it's just another good tune. But I think that it's kind of meant as a little bit of something to kind of calm you down a little bit before the next track comes out. And like, because the Holy Thunder Force is just like like force is the right word, because it's a full force power metal song that just comes out like all guns blazing.
Is it your favorite on the album?
It's not. I only say that because me and Knops and Matt we played the ever loving shit out of the song in college to the point where I kind of killed it. Like we would get drunk and play the song and pull up the lyrics and sing it in like full blast.
At the bar.
It was
no, I'm just kidding.
Alone in a dorm room. The bar would have been less embarrassing probably, but we just loved it so much. I mean, Knops, it was always a challenge to find like power metal that he really enjoyed, but for some reason this song just it just made everybody happy. I still really like it. I feel like I'm going to enjoy it even more in a live setting. I'm pretty sure they played it in Atlanta a couple years ago, but it's another like just complete power metal banger. It's probably one of Rhapsody's, I would argue, one of their three most well received or most like, I don't know. It's hard to say like popular because when it's Rhapsody, how popular could it be? But it's probably one of their most popular songs, along with Emerald Sword. I would think
they have a history of having a really strong banger of a style single as the 7th track on those early albums. Don't ask me why. Look it up if you don't believe me. But the reality is this might be the best power metal song on the album. I mean, straight up power metal, even better than the title track. It has this angry feel to it, but kind of majestic in the verses. Like it's a really infectious chorus as well, and great symphonic elements. It kind of has the total package. I like how the band kind of drops out in spots, but the vocals continue. I always thought that was a cool effect. And in many ways, I think it's the best keyboard solo on the entire album. It gives me strong Stradivarius feels if you took the rest of the band out of it. This track rocks, and I guess I didn't play it as much as you, so I still like it a little bit more perhaps, but it's going to be good live. I just hope that the keyboards are live, like you said, because this is a track that needs it.
Yeah, just the way that the song kicks off, like it's just like, you know, there's no like lead in, there's no like, you know, symphonic noodling. Like it's just like, here we go, we're going full blast right off the bat, and so it's a great song for that reason. You know, you mentioned the track 7, Land of Immortals was track 7 on Legendary Tales, and that's another song that I think is similar, where it just comes out full guns blazing, like I said. So yeah, a really good song. I just think it was so overplayed by me, especially having the single ahead of the full length album. So yeah, but still, it's still great. Dawn of Victory is always probably going to be my favorite song on this album, but I didn't choose it for my song of the week for reasons I'll get to. But yeah, another strong song.
So as we kind of move ahead here towards the back end of the album, the next track is a 2.5 minute intro, or I should say instrumental. I'll say intro as well. It's called Trolls in the Dark. It's really just a precursor to The Last Winged Unicorn. This instrumental has a really sinister sounding start, but it kind of picks up like a lot of their instrumentals do. It's not bad. It's just slightly nondescript for me. It's really more of a precursor to the next track. Like I said, I don't really have much to say about it, but I'm wondering if you do, or if you want to just get into The Last Winged Unicorn.
I think that this is something that you're going to see more of with Rhapsody on as bonus tracks and you know, extra tracks on singles and stuff, where it's just kind of like these shorter tracks of Luca Turilli just kind of soloing. And I think that's pretty much what this is. I think it's the only track on the album that's credited to Luca only. But yeah, like you said, it really is just kind of meant as I look at it more as a segue between Holy Thunder Force and The Last Winged Unicorn, because it doesn't flow directly into the next track. It does actually end, and then quickly the next song begins. But it's fine. I think that it's just kind of meant to put a little padding in between two banger tracks.
I'll accept that. Although if you're not really paying close attention, The Last Winged Unicorn does sound like this an extension to that instrumental track, almost like it's one long track, even though there is that pause. What are your thoughts on this penultimate track?
I think that this is one of the songs that I have criminally underrated over the years, and that's why I want to make it my song of the week, just because as soon as that track opens with that that keyboard, that harpsichord sound, and then Fabio just comes in with that iconic Fabio voice. It's such just a kick-ass way to start a song, and it's got that like epic chorus, and it's got, I think you had mentioned earlier, kind of the those darker kind of keyboard passages that I think we heard more of on Symphony of Enchanted Lands, more so than Legendary Tales. This has that too. The solos are just typical Rhapsody, just, fun, like back and forth between keys and guitars. This really just has everything I like in a Rhapsody song, and I thought it would be nice to kind of shine a spotlight on a song that maybe hasn't gotten as much love as, say, Dawn of Victory or Holy Thunder Force. So that's what I'm going to go with, and I recommend that if you're not that familiar with it, to give it a listen beyond the 1 minute that we're about to play. But I think this is a really good tune, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to hear this one live.
I'm very happy that you selected this track, because to me, this is probably the biggest sleeper on the entire album. I totally forgot about this song. I love the vocal melodies during the verses, and I think the chorus is a little bit much with the operatic, or should I say like the layered vocals and everything, but it's still enjoyable. And the backing, like operatic vocals that you hear throughout this is really reminiscent of Luca Turilli's first solo album, which we covered in the archives. I think the bridge is great, and the song is just so catchy that I can't help but like it. So it's one of those things that maybe I didn't appreciate as much in 2000 or 2001. But as I go back, I kind of think this is what power metal is missing, and it's songs like this on deeper cuts on albums that are just really, really catchy. They don't make them like they used to, as they say. So excellent choice. And then
I want to also just throw out there, like I forgot to mention, there's a section of the song that I really, really like. It's about at the 145 mark, where it just goes into like Castlevania, or like an organ. It's more of an organ than a harpsichord, and it's like really like Halloween, Castlevania spooky kind of sounds, like the haunted castle or whatever. And then I used to absolutely hate this narrator guy, because I just thought it was just like so cheesy. But now it's just kind of like, it kind of fits like the early era of Rhapsody before they called up Christopher Lee and started having like an all-time legend doing their narration. So it's a little goofy, and I think I made mention of it in the previous episodes and on the Luca episode, but like the narration, like while the music is playing in the background, you hear like those like really triumphant brass. I don't know if it's actual instruments or just, key patches or whatever, but it's just, that section is so cool. And it's only like it only goes up to about the halfway point of the song, and then there's still like so much song left. There's so much. It's not a super long song. It's under 6 minutes, but there's so much that's like crammed into it. So much that like just about everything that makes Rhapsody great around this time is kind of encapsulated all into this one song. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
I think that's a great way to put a cap on it. And then it ends with a long 9 minute and 15-second epic, The Mighty Ride of the Fire Lord. I don't know that it's one of their best epic tracks. They have some really good ones in the discography. But there's a lot of elements to this song that's really enjoyable. It's not blazing fast, but it's certainly up-tempo, kind of progressive in a way, just because of the complexity of the songwriting here. And it has this really climactic feel to it. And what you have, I think, is these whimsical passages that kind of connect the various verses and chorus on the track. Heavy on the orchestration, heavy on the folkiness. But for me, it's a little bit disconjoined, almost like a lot of great ideas, but when you connect them together, each could have been a song in its own right, and they didn't need to put it together in this long song. I think you'll probably disagree with me, but it's not my favorite track on the album. It just, from a songwriting standpoint, I thought they could have done more with some of these ideas.
I really like this song. I just think that it's kind of meant to be kind of a wrapping up of the whole album and this part of the story. And so I think that's why it feels like it's kind of bouncing around a little bit musically, but I think that's why it's, over 9 minutes long. I don't know if this was like a track that was supposed to be longer. Like the last track on Symphony of Enchanted Lands was like a 4-part, 13-minute plus song that I think was broken out in a more understandable way. There's a under 5-minute edit version of this that I have on the Digipack, but I never ripped that disc, so I didn't get a chance to go back and listen to it. I'm not quite sure how a song like this would be edited down, because I feel like all the parts of it are kind of important to the song. So I don't know. Interesting. I'll have to dig that up out of storage and give that a listen. But I really like, I like the way that the song starts out. It's like, again, it's kind of a slow burn, and then it, the guitars kick in and we're off and running. But I mean, there's like super symphonic passages. There's like really calm, like woodwind driven passages. Then it goes like back. There's a really purveying guitar riff that goes like it's such a, I don't know, it's such an infectious riff to me. I'm really excited to see them put this together live. I can't imagine they played this song live in the past, but I mean, I really have no idea. But I mean, I think it's a great way to cap off this this really epic album. And I think I always kind of like forgot about everything after Holy Thunder Force, because there's so much good stuff at the beginning of the first 7 tracks of the album that
it's a little front loaded. It's a little top heavy, just a little. Not to say that the back end is terrible, but it's the front end of the album is so good that it does lose a little something after Holy Thunder Force.
Yeah, and when I was younger, I think I just would suffer from fatigue with albums. Yeah, that too. It just kind of all right, I listened to the first 7 tracks, I got a lot out of it, so maybe I'm not paying as close of attention to the rest, whereas, after almost 250 episodes, you kind of learn to really pay attention to the entire thing. So yeah, I think that those last 3 tracks on the album, I think, were underappreciated by me over the years. And I think that, now, really just sitting down and listening to the album from start to finish for the first time in a while. I think I went back and listened to this after we did Symphony of Enchanted Lands, because I was kind of curious how I felt about the 2 albums, one versus the other. And I felt like in my head, I was like, I want to say I like Dawn of Victory better. And then I listened to it again. And I was like, yeah, I do like Dawn of Victory better. And so that was kind of like my exercise from the last time we talked about Rhapsody. I'll be curious to see if we, going forward, if there's any Rhapsody albums that came after this that maybe I didn't give enough attention to, and that I may like even more than this one. But as just based on where my head is at now, I will continue to say that this is definitely my favorite Rhapsody album of all time.
I am sure that we'll get to them in due course. I'm also virtually certain that nothing that comes after this will come close, for me, to the first three. I would have said the first two, but I think it's time for me to now put this up there with the first two, because I really did think it was remarkably a solid album from top to bottom, even though I'm, kind of nitpicking with some of my critique. I'm going to give this an 8.5. This to me was right up there with the things I loved about the debut album. I still think Symphony of Enchanted Lands is a better album from top to bottom, but this is not far behind, really just a hair behind that, and up there with the first one in terms of the pantheon of Rhapsody albums. I'm not sure that any of the other ones will even crack an 8. You might get some 7.5, some good stuff for sure, but just not as good from top to bottom. But I'll be curious to get to them, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time for those. I'm curious to know your thoughts, given how highly you rank those first two.
Yeah, so just to go back in time, I gave Legendary Tales a 9.25. You gave it an 8.5. Symphony of Enchanted Lands, I gave an 8.875. You gave it 8.75. And we get to Dawn of Victory. I have to go ahead and give this a 9.5. I just I love Legendary Tales, but I think Legendary Tales is almost a product of nostalgia and being like the very first Rhapsody album I ever heard. I think that this is a slightly even better album. I think it's I think we're getting like the more mature version of Rhapsody. It's, probably the peak or the apex of what the band would be for me. But I think as far as like the production goes, I think the band is going to improve even more going forward as far as like putting together, just recording with full choruses and full orchestras and getting Christopher friggin' Lee to do the narrating and that sort of thing. I think this was kind of like the beginning of that point for them. But I mean, I think this is kind of where they peaked for me as a fan. I remember Reign of a Thousand Flames pretty well, but I always considered it more of an EP, although the band lists it as like a full-length album on their website. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they consider it a full-length album. And Power of the Dragon Flame, which I believe is the final chapter of the saga that all these albums are telling. I remember there's some songs on it that I like a lot, and then there's some songs that I don't really remember that well. So that's one that I would definitely need to revisit. And then after that, they kind of go in a different direction, I think, because the storyline of the Emerald Sword saga comes to an end. And so when Symphony of Enchanted Lands 2 comes out in 2004, I think the band kind of is headed in a new direction. It's the last album, before they become Rhapsody of Fire. It's the first album that Alex Holsworth actually plays drums on, apparently. The previous 3 albums, apparently, he was credited and never actually played on, which is really strange. Normally
they play on it and don't get credit. Here, he's getting credit and didn't play on it. That's quite the gig, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the story was behind that. But all things considered, I kind of waffled between giving this a 9.375 and a 9.5. And as I was re-listening to those last 2 tracks, I just feel like the album like really ended much stronger than I remembered it. And I think it's just a really wonderful experience. I unfortunately, I don't think there's such thing as a 10 out of 10 Rhapsody album. I think this is kind of where they peak, in my opinion. But I just love this album so much. And I'm getting to a point where we've seen so much stuff and we've crossed off so many things from bucket lists and stuff. So I feel like it's a rarity for us to get really excited when something is announced. And when I saw that announcement, I was like, oh, yay. Fabio Leone is going to play some Rhapsody songs. But then when it said they were playing this album in its entirety, I actually got goosebumps and marked out. And that doesn't happen very often anymore. So cheers to Nathan Block for pulling that one off, because it's honestly pretty rare that I would get super excited. But to hear this album played in full, I think is going to be a real treat. And then, probably another 45 minutes of great Rhapsody songs to follow. I think it's going to be great, and it's going to be a really interesting band to follow. To follow up Green Carnation. What a 1-2 punch that's going to be.
I'll say. I mean, you want to talk about two bands that couldn't sound any different, many more different from one another. You got it. But yeah, good choice. I'm glad you were able to convince me that this thing was worth another listen, and that's part of the reason why we do this, right? I'm very happy that I went back and I got to hear this. So. Yeah, we'll get to our album for next week momentarily. I just want to mention a couple of news items. Thin Lizzy and Whitesnake guitarist John Sykes, dead at the age of 65. We talked about him briefly when we covered Blue Murder with Andrew Gross on the podcast, going back a couple of years now. Very sad news out of that camp. Not 100% sure of the details here, but I think it is worth mentioning. A name for sure in the hard rock and metal community who's gone way too soon. So our thoughts and prayers out to his family. He passed away after a battle with cancer earlier this week. In a little bit lighter news, Elevati has announced their new album ANV, A-N-V, coming out April 25th of this year on Nuclear Blast Records. It looks like it's going to feature a dozen new tracks. God, I love this band. I have to see them live. If they come here, I have to go out of my way to see them. They are one of the few bands left on my bucket list who I've not yet seen, but I just think that everything they touch, I've been enjoying more and more and more. And every time I go back to some of their older material, I like it even more than I did the first time I heard it. So new music from the Elevati camp. And finally, Between the Buried and Me is going out on tour this spring in the U.S., starting April 29th in Baltimore, ending up in New Kensington, Pennsylvania on May 24th, doing something interesting, playing 2 sets, performing 2 albums in its entirety, Coma Ecliptic and Alaska. So kind of fun if you like those albums. You're going to get to hear both in their entirety on this new tour. So a very, very good live band, extremely tight. Not my favorite band per se, but really good stuff live, I have to say. So that's the news from here. You want to talk about what we're covering next week on the podcast by request?
Yes, I do. Our friend Amy has requested Brothers of Metal's Prophecy of Ragnarok album that came out in 2017. I remember when this album came out, it was their debut album, and it was just like a really, I just thought it was a really cool, it was really unlike anything I had heard at the time. I haven't gone back to it in a long time, and I feel like I have not really enjoyed their subsequent albums as much as this one, although there's only been 2. To my recollection, this one was my favorite, so I'm looking forward to discussing this one. I was really excited when they were announced as a replacement to play at Prague Power, and then they were eventually replaced themselves. I don't remember who they replaced, and I don't remember who replaced them. But I was excited to see them play. I'm such a big fan of Ylva, particularly. I love her vocals, but yeah, this will be interesting because I don't know that we've really talked much about this band at all in our 240 plus episodes.
I've never really been a fan of the band, so this is my first time doing a deep dive. I think I've probably heard a track here or a track there, and I just never paid them any mind. So this is my first time really kind of going into their stuff and listening to a full album from start to finish. So this is going to be interesting for me. I struggle with a lot of the newer power metal that's out there. I don't know if you want to call this power metal, but to me, it's kind of like power metal with a Viking tinge. I don't know. I really don't know what my thoughts are at this point. But I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go in with an open mind, and we'll see what happens. And always happy to talk about something new. So kudos to Amy for the request, and we'll come back next week and cover it in long form.
Yes, looking forward to it. So yeah, kind of sticking to the fantasy side of power metal, I guess, for 2 weeks in a row. I think we will probably be breaking that streak, however, the week after.
I can guarantee you we do that, but we have something fun planned for the second week in September to coincide with a release that's coming out around that same time. So I'll just float that idea, and then I'll come back and give a full report on 70,000 Tons of Metal towards the end of the month. And obviously we've got a little special surprise planned for our 250th, which also happens to coincide with a very busy month of February here at the Metal Exchange.
Yep, they don't give us enough days, so we have to cram in as much as we can. I just wanted to ask you one quick thing before we signed off that I kind of forgot to mention when we were discussing Dawn of Victory. I had mentioned around the same time the Keepers of Jericho Halloween tribute album was released, and Rhapsody had a song on there that I think was probably recorded during the Dawn of Victory sessions, and it was a cover of Guardians, which is a Waiki song from Walls of Jericho. Do you have any thoughts on that cover by any chance? I know we did a full episode on the second Keepers of Jericho album, and I have a feeling we'll probably circle back to Volume 1 at some point, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because I always really, really liked that version, and I feel like Halloween had such a rudimentary and raw sound when Walls of Jericho came out, and like Rhapsody kind of like really put a symphonic polish on this a song that I never really gave much love to, but when I heard it like with this new life breathed into it, I really appreciated what a strong composition it was from Waiki back when maybe the production wasn't quite where it would end up being.
I'm happy that you used the word polish, because to me that's exactly what they did. They kind of breathed new life into a song just because of the way that they were able to use, at the time, modern production techniques. A lot had changed in 15 or so years since the debut had come out. I like the cover a lot. I'd be really kind of intrigued to do that album in long form. Maybe we'll do it for a Patreon episode or something like that, just because I think that would be interesting to do it as a bonus episode. But there's a lot of good stuff on that album that is worth talking about, and I think this is one of those tracks. It just had more of a modern feel to it, and I think gave me a newfound respect for the song that I maybe just either underappreciated or something that just kind of got swept away as a result of mediocre production at best.
Yeah, it should also be mentioned that this is arguably one of the greatest collection of bands on a compilation I've ever seen. Rhapsody, Sonata Arctica, Heaven's Gate, Luca Turilli, Vision Divine, Brainstorm, Labyrinth, Darkmoor, Secret Sphere. Like,
it is a who's who of power metal around the turn of the century.
Some of these bands I wasn't as familiar with at the time, but I would certainly become familiar with them. And then some of them I've never heard of again, like Morafade and Sidonia. So it'll be interesting to talk about this at some point. But I did want to throw that out there because I just always I think I actually play the Guardians cover on one of my radio shows that we have have on tape, and we actually just released the first one to our Patreon members just yesterday actually. So just another reason to join the Patreon. You can listen to me at 18 years old do a radio show in college, but I don't remember which episode, but I definitely played this song. I was just so into this era of Rhapsody and the Keeper. I listened to that Keepers of Jericho album a lot. I remember I think I had a burned copy of it at first, and then I bought the actual copy, and I played the hell out of it along with Metal Opera Part 1, Dark Ride, and Dawn of Victory. Like all those albums from 2000, 2001 just really stick in my mind. That was a really big time period for me in power metal. So,
with good reason, it was. Dare I say, the heyday of power metal in many ways. But yeah, we'll come back next week, talk all things Brothers of Metal, and I hope you enjoy the week. It's been fun.
Yeah, good times. I'm always happy when I can get you to like something a little bit more than you thought you did. So that's we'll see with the next time I can pull that off. I'm running out of stuff to throw at you. So.
Mission accomplished. Enjoy the week, my friend.
All right, take care.